So again, just to sort of see who's been, reading the news the most, I made a little Kahoot if you wanted to join that while we're waiting for everyone to arrive. So if you guys if you wanted to just join this Kahoot as we're waiting for everyone to get in. So Maria's in there. Anyone else? Hmm. Give it to like 10:03, and then we'll just get started and keep moving forward. Anyone? Okay. So, well, and just because I think it's, just all this business news going to be influencing what happens in terms of how much money the government has or how much people are working. So that's why I just wanted, to throw some news into the, and based on that story we covered last class, I threw a couple of the answers from that story into this Kahoot as well. So the Bank of Canada wants an annual inflation target. What's their target? Based on what we did last class. 0, no inflation, 1%, 2%, or 3%. Oh, did I apologize. It should be 2. I think I had clicked my answer, and then I moved them around. That one's on me. But we do want about 2% inflation right now. Last month was about 1. I apologize. Whoever guessed 2, I guess you just need to come back. I'll fix the quiz. Sometimes you do these things and you don't do it correctly. My apologies. The biggest risk, are they more concerned right now with too much inflation or too little inflation? Yeah, right now what they're worried about is the businesses, won't, they're going to err on the side that there's too much deflation, that businesses won't have enough money to, buy as much as they did before. Which of the following have been disrupted by COVID-19? Would you say supply was disrupted? There's only one answer: demand, neither, or both. Yeah, they've both been disrupted. Supply, because there may be labor shortages, goods coming into the country, and then demand, obviously people losing their jobs, restaurants and stores closing, we're not ordering as many goods. I don't know if you follow the exchange rate. How many US cents does a Canadian dollar buy right now? What's the exchange rate as of yesterday? Is it 70 cents? A Canadian dollar buys 72 cents, 75 cents, or 78 cents? Yeah, right now it's 72 cents. And would you say that that's up? Is it up slightly or down slightly in the last week? Has it risen or has it fallen? It's gone up a little bit from 70 to 72 in the last few business days. Okay. Adam's taking the lead. So which food delivery app left Canada this week? Foodora, DoorDash, Skip the Dishes, Uber Eats. So you'd think, oh, well, definitely these apps are doing better. People are ordering more food, but not quite. Foodora just hasn't been getting enough sales, and it announced it was exiting the Canadian market this week. Due to supply issues, McDonald's has started using imported dairy, imported beef, imported potato, or imported napkins, because they were unsure that they could get enough supply. So they had to, normally they local source everything, but they had to, yeah, they've started importing beef. And you might have also heard Trump authorized the Defense Production Act to keep, livestock plants open, because people are a little concerned that COVID-19 will cause the food um, chain to be disrupted. Since it hit a low on the 23rd of March, the composite has regained 10% of its value. It regained 20% of what it lost, or it regained 30%, or it regained 40%. If you're watching the news, energy companies, not oil, but energy companies have rebounded, and as a result, it's regained 30% of what it had lost. Okay, last question. So Jade has the lead right now. This company is now second in Canada. So this company now has become second to RBC in terms of market cap. Is it Canada Goose, Shopify, BMO, Rogers? Which one is now second in Canada in terms of value? Yeah, it's Shopify. So you might think it was Rogers, or you might think it was a bank, but Shopify, based on how much their shares worth this week, is now the second biggest company in Canada. It's a little bit of a surprise. Adam's third, Jasper's second, Jade was following the news the best right now. So congratulations. So one thing about Google Classroom is it's not always the best software. It doesn't have all the features we'd like as a teacher. So I had tried to post everything at the beginning of the year just to make things clear. But then obviously school being disrupted, it didn't work. Last night I went in and cleaned up, so if you go here under upcoming, under view all, in terms of what's upcoming, you shouldn't, there's no more end of year test. We're not going to do that. There was another assignment about ethics and consumer affairs. I've removed that. So, you know, if you're not sure what you should do, I've eliminated some of those extra assignments, and you just should be able to see under upcoming, okay, what question does he want me to answer? What's the little task for this week? Now, if you're still trying to improve your mark, then this international business project can be something that you do. But aside from that, if you just keep up with the little tasks each week, it'll help you get ready for business in grade 12, or grade 11 if you're taking it next year. So today's class is going to be about the business cycle. So there's a little bit of a handout. There's a little bit of a prezi. I found a link. Warren Buffett was giving some advice for young investors like you, so you could read that on your own if you wanted to, and see what he thought you guys should be thinking about when you invest for the first time. So, if anyone has any questions, just hit the raise hands feature. You guys voted that we do the next few classes on leadership, so that's what we're going to do. And just, I wanted to go over the business cycle just because it's coming up a lot. You might hear the term recession or GDP falling, and so I just wanted to cover that. So it's also relevant, just generally speaking, the overall economic conditions affect the business, right? If we're feeling good about the economy and our jobs, then we're going to go out to dinner more. We're going to order an item online. We're going to walk into the local businesses and buy something. And then, they're going to pay their employees. Their employees are going to go to the grocery store. Everyone's going to feel good about this. And everyone feels that they have more money to spend when the economy is going well, and everyone feels very confident. But the inverse is true. If things are going badly, people feel nervous. So I always like the analogy of dropping a stone into a pond. That initial spending is like the stone, but then if you can visualize it, there's all these ripples and that radiate outward from where the stone was dropped. And that's the sort of the wave of economic activity, is that initial money gets recirculated from the restaurant to the employees, to the grocery stores, to the food wholesalers, to the farmers, and over again. So when someone loses their job and they stop spending money, it can take more money out of the economy than you would think. So kind of understanding this particular chart is good to know. This is what they mean by the business cycle. The idea is over time, it has always been a series of ups and downs. It never is a continuous, constant, slope. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up again. But overall, it does tend to increase. Our level of output, our GDP, our gross domestic product, goes up over time. That's because there's more and more people in the world, more and more people in Canada. We're producing more, but it's not a straight path to get there. Right now we're in a pretty big, it looks like we're going to be in a recession. It's decreasing. We're hoping that it hits a trough, it hits the bottom, and in the summer and fall we can start recovering. But we actually don't know how long that bottom is going to be. And that you're going to understand in the economy that there's different stages that can happen. And there's basically 4 major stages. Sometimes they have different words, but so right now we're in this decline. A recession is 2 straight quarters of negative growth. Then it starts to bottom out. Then it'll recover and enter an expansion phase or a recovery. It goes up, and it hits a peak at a certain point, and then it starts to decline and starts to contract again. So, and if you look at Canada's growth, over the years, it always goes a little bit up, a little bit down. I need to update this chart. Kind of worried about, what's going to actually happen. So in 6 months' time, when we get a handle about how badly the decline has been, would be a great time to update that chart, but just, if you look at it, there's been ups and downs throughout history. You look at any part of the chart, you can see there's going to be those little recessions, those little expansions, those little recessions, and it's just part of the business cycle. So the first phase would be what we would call an expansion. So we could say from 2010 to 2019, we were in a pretty good expansion. Companies were hiring, people were spending their money, people were feeling good about it. People were buying cars, they were buying homes, people were feeling pretty good about the economy. So you might hear the expression consumer confidence. So that would be if you were to ask someone, what do you feel about the economy? Do you, how good do you feel about the economy? That would be consumer confidence. And it's something that we track because business, there's always this psychological element to it. If we feel good about what's going to happen, we're likely to spend more money. If we don't feel good, if we're worried, like right now, everyone's worried, will they have a job? Will their customers come back? You can see how people are holding their money, holding on to their money and saving it because they don't know what's happened. When they feel good about things, they're likely to spend more money. Then, it tends to an expansion is followed by it'll reach a peak. It'll reach a peak where the levels are pretty high. People are spending a lot of money. Prices are a little bit higher than they were before, and it declines naturally, and it's caused a contraction. So it might be every few years for a couple of months things just go down slightly just as a check. Or right now we're in a massive contraction. They're estimating that we're losing 20 to 25% of our GDP. So it's been like a very, very steep decline. So workers are laid off, businesses close, consumers try to save money. For it to be a recession, we need to have two quarters of negative economic growth. So to use the term recession, it has to last at least 6 months. Each quarter is a 3-month period. So if it goes down for one quarter on its own, that's just a small contraction. It has to go down multiple quarters. And I don't know if you're watching the news and people are trying to debate, okay, is it going to be like 3 months of contraction, then everyone's going to spend their money? I saw someone this morning, they were saying, no. After it reopens, everyone's going to make adjustments to their business. They're going to, reduce the number of customers, reduce the number of seats. They'll have to buy some safety equipment. They'll have to reduce staff. It won't. Their point was it wouldn't get back to the way that it was for a long period of time. Does anyone have, any questions about that part so far? About some of those terms? You want to raise your hand or type it in the chat window, and I'll answer it. But that's sort of the idea that our economy, it's not a steady slope. It's a series of expansions and contractions. I'll just get where's my chat window? Okay, so I think if you type something into the chat window, it should flash, and then I should be able to see it. Okay. So, and right now we're in a contraction, and you can see how people are worrying about what's going to happen. So, one thing that's happened lately, because of globalization, because all of our countries were, are linked together, we're buying consumer goods from China. We're selling our goods to North America. We're selling our financial services to Europe. It used to be more contained. It used to be that maybe 1 or 2 countries or Europe would have a recession and the rest of the world would be fine. But now, because everyone's buying and selling each other's goods, it can expand more quickly. So again, I had prepared this just before the March break. And obviously now we would change some of these at risks to red for recession. And if we were to do this chart today, a month and a half later than when I first added it, we would just see that there's a lot more red throughout the world just because of how everything is linked together. So one thing that globalization has done, and if you take grade 12 international business, you'll see how what happens in one country because of the manufacturing, because of the interconnected retail, because of the shipping, can influence another part of the world. So one of our goals as a country, Canada normally wants economic stability. So if you ask the Minister of Finance, Bill Morneau, or you ask the Bank of Canada, what is it that they're trying to do? They want slow and steady growth, because having a huge boom where everyone's spending money like crazy and the economy rises suddenly, that's not ideal either, because it's hard to predict what'll happen. When will it stop? Will it keep going up this rate? They actually want a slow and steady increase of about 2% annually. So you might hear Donald Trump saying, oh, there's going to be a big bang when we reopen the economy, or it's going to be a big boom. He's sort of saying, okay, everyone, once they get back into the stores, they're just going to spend money like they did before. That would help us recover, but it's also not sustainable. So you might see, the term boom, and then kind of right now we're in what you would call a bit of a bust, right? Everything suddenly just collapsed. The bottom just fell out, and that's no good either, because we're wondering, well, when is this going to end? If people have lost their job, they're worried about when they're going to get their job back. So the idea is to create stable growth, people feeling prosperous, feeling good. And then, over time, they'll slowly grow their business, they'll slowly grow their, spending. And, if you want to, again, this kind of it included the upturn we've just finished, but to show how our countries are connected, if you look at the how confident people are, and this is a study from Maclean's magazine that used how often did people Google the word recession. It's almost the same in Canada as it is in the United States. So if they feel nervous about the economy, we're going to feel nervous about it, because we're watching the same news, we have the same international trade, the same interconnectedness. So there's unfortunately, the economies in the world, in terms of their actual growth, and also in terms of how people psychologically feel about them, they're very, very closely linked. So what happens, we mentioned this a bit last class, is when there's more demand than there is supply, we can have inflation. This can be problematic if it's like a core good, like for example, what you buy at the grocery store. If food goes up, that's a necessity. We have to buy that. If there's inflation in food prices, that's a big chunk out of people's money. If gas goes up a lot, we all need to buy gas to get to work or to heat homes. That would be a big issue as well. So when we're in an expansion period, usually you might hear the term inflation. We want a little bit of inflation because it means the country is growing, but we don't want too much. And what might happen is, there could be some heavy inflation of food prices in the next little while if some of these supply chains are disrupted. And just in terms of a term you might hear every now and then, I can't say that I've heard it in this particular crisis yet, but how far does your dollar go? So if you imagine $100 and you go to the grocery store, well, how much does that $100 buy you? How much food do you get? So if you go, if you went in January with your parents and you saw how much $100 would buy, that would, and then you compared it to now, are you getting more groceries or less? Like how far you can buy, how far your money goes, how much you can buy, how many goods you can buy would be your purchasing power. And when people feel that their purchasing power is shrinking because they're spending so much money on rent and food and gas, it can cause them to feel very, very nervous. Uh, Again, just the Canada, it's not necessarily one economy. Um, Over the past recent years, Ontario was pretty consistent. It kind of matched the Bank of Canada's growth, but it was actually the far west, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, that were growing at a very high rate. And those were some of the resources that I used. So hopefully if you hear some of these terms on the news, if you see, oh, they're talking, are we in a recession or not? If you hear the term GDP, gross domestic product, hopefully this can help you understand that a little bit. Again, I rushed through it to make sure we got it done in half an hour. Does anyone have any questions about what I said today? Does anyone have any questions about something they might have heard while watching the news? Okay. So if you are a little unsure, you can come and I think I covered just about all of these. Um, yeah, and just understand the big takeaway is kind of visualizing that our economy grows along this little shape of the ups and downs and understanding what the four phases are. Last class, we talked about risk management. So in terms of the weekly activity, I said you could do it individually, or you could do it with a partner, or you could do it, collaborate with 3 people, or if you were online, to go and pick an emergency that could happen to a company and to sort of create a plan for it. Has anyone had any trouble with that? Anyone have any questions about that sort of emergency planning activity? Okay, so like use the thumbs up button or whatever. If you look to the bottom, there's a little reaction. You can give me applause, which you don't have to, but you could, if someone asks a question like, hey, does anyone have any questions about the risk management assignment? You can click on reactions and then click a little thumbs up, and then people know, okay, they they don't have any questions. It's not like they've left the Zoom chat and gone to get a coffee. So does anyone have any questions about that risk management assignment? Okay, so I'm seeing 1 thumbs up. Okay, that's good. So I'll be here in the chat if you have another question. So as I mentioned, you guys voted, so we'll talk about some leadership next class. We'll start with motivation in terms of how leaders need to motivate people, and then we'll cover. It'll probably be a little bit of a preview. Is anyone thinking of taking the BOH course? Next year or the year after, the business leadership course with Mr. Rubinoff. If you are, probably we'll do a little bit of a preview of that course and then give you situations where you can imagine that you're the CEO and you have to make a decision. So our next class is Friday at 10. If you have an extra question, you can stay here in the chat room and ask me. And then otherwise, I'll see you Friday at 10. Thanks a lot to everyone.